Nation was shocked by the behavior of Wells Fargo. But what's equally shocking is that Wells Fargo seems uninterested in atoning for what it did. Was there any discussion at the board, Ms. Duke, of being on the right side of history and instructing your lobbyists to lobby in favor of the Overdraft Protection Act so that you could do something good for the consumers of the country, having ripped them off by the tens of millions? Yes or no? Was there a discussion of supporting that act?
In the board meeting, we've discussed overdraft programs, but we've not
But you did not discuss what your lobbyists do in Washington, which affect not just your customers, which might be 1 in 10 or 1 in 20 Americans. You didn't even discuss the idea of being on the right side of the history for all the consumers. Did you discuss whether you should assert the rights under the arbitration provisions so that the arbitration provision kept somebody out of court for the phony account when they only signed it for the real account? Was that discussed in the board?
We did not.
Well, it sounds like the board is terribly disinterested in atoning for the harm done to consumers in general in the country, or the particular consumers that were consumers of the bank. But let's shift from the outrages of the past to the crisis of the present. The stress test is designed to deal with what happens when you have a catastrophic event in the economy, because we know that every year there's some chance that such an event might occur. But once one event occurs, that does not diminish the likelihood of a second event occurring. So we've had one called the coronavirus. You could almost call it a two, the decline in oil prices, which has shook up a bit of the economy. That means we could very well have a third that's no more likely or less likely that something else that you did the stress test for would occur. Every dollar of dividends you pay or stock buybacks that you do makes the bank less able to deal with these catastrophes. You testified that America needs a strong Wells Fargo in today's economy. You put together at the board level back in July a stock buyback and dividend program. Did that program anticipate what you would do if the country had one, call it 1.5 catastrophes that could affect the bank and the economy, and could very well have another one?
I believe the design of the stress test actually does that. So within the stress test, there are not only changes in the economy and economic variables, but also plugged into it are assumptions about different risk events.
So the board is, you were still on the board when the coronavirus hit. You were there a couple days ago. You believe a strong Wells Fargo is needed for our economy, and that you have a national duty to provide a strong Wells Fargo. And after the coronavirus broke, did you have discussions of ending or scaling back your stock buyback program?
So I have not attended a board meeting since then, but I spent a lot of time.
Well, I would assume this being a national.
I did speak with Charlie about the actions the company was taking internally.
How about the stock buyback program? The weakening the bank, endangering the nation because you are too big to fail, in order to enrich the management by keeping the stock price up. No discussions of that since this epidemic arose?
The design of the stress tests on capital are to include the effects of unforeseen events.
But once you have one unforeseen event, then it's much more likely that you'll end up with several. Well, once you plan for 1 or 2 or 3, once you have one, then the likelihood of 4 increases because you already have one.
Right.
And you're saying this coronavirus, you never thought about doing anything to diminish the payments to shareholders.
So I joined the Federal Reserve in August 2008. I am very much aware of the risk to banking. I know absolutely what it looks like when a run on a bank starts. I know once it starts how difficult it is
So
to
we're just-
control. I know how important capital is to the,
So you know all these
I
things.
know how important liquidity is.
When we have a change in circumstance, you'd think we'd have a change in policy unless only the interests of management matter to the director, to the directors. I yield
The
back.
gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman